All right, in this lesson, we're going to look at mechanical joining as well as a few of the steps that we haven't covered so far when we're doing some sketching, like drawing patterns. So to start that, we're going to do a ball bearing. This is actually a design that was presented in CAD/CAM tutorials on YouTube. So I'm actually using his dimensions. If you guys wanted to look at his drawing, it's pretty good as well. I mean, it's the exact same thing that we're going to be doing here. So anyway, let's go. We're going to start. We're going to draw a new part. So we're going to start, and we're going to draw our inner and outer races, the balls, and the cage for this ball bearing. And let me show you what the end assembly looks like. So all right, so this is our assembly here. Here's our inner race, our outer race, the ball bearings, and the cage. And this cage is all one big piece here, so you can see that. And then we also have these rivets that hold the cages together, and the cage is it's two pieces. So we'll only draw one of these pieces, and then when we put the whole thing together in assembly, we'll mirror it over and we'll mirror the other side. So let's get started. We'll go back to our first part. And so our first part is going to be that outer race. So we'll start with the front plane. Right click, go to sketch. All right, so we're normal to our sketch plane here. What we want to do is we want to start by drawing a few center lines in here. We'll just go through the origin, do a vertical line. And then we'll go, escape. No, got a point there. Center line. And go through the origin again, draw a horizontal line. All right. So we'll start with a rectangle and do a center point rectangle. Draw it up here. All right. Escape. Go to Smart Dimensions. We're going to we'll measure some distances off of this line here. So our first distance off this line is going to be from here to here. We'll make that 53. Our second distance here to here, and make that 65. All right, I'm going to make our width. Our width is going to be 31. All right, so that fully defines our rectangle. It tells us where all these lines need to be and the relation to the center point. All right, and so the next thing we want to do is let's zoom in a little bit here. We're going to draw an arc. So we're going to use this 3-point arc here. We'll start with our center. Click, go up to this line, draw over to this line, and click. All right. So there's our arc, and say okay. All right. And we can convert some entity. We'll convert this entity here. Let's hit that line. So okay. And then we can trim some entities. So we'll go in here and we'll trim that line there, trim that line there. And that gives us this shape, okay? Now a few things that we can do while we're here is we can click on this line. We'll go over here and we'll click on this line and we'll make them equal. They're already gonna be equal because we're mirroring around the center point, but that way if it gets shifted off of this, this line, you don't get any change in those. All right, So our next measurement that we want to do, say okay to those being equal. Our next measurement we want to do is from this point up to this line. We want this value to be 8. So essentially what that's going to do is when we give this line a radius, it's going to tell how far into this outer race the groove is going to be cut. So then our next line is going to be our radius here. Pull off there, make that 12. So that tells us that the radius of our ball bearing is going to be 12. All right, so this is this shape completed. Now what we want to do is we want to go to feature and we want to revolve our boss base. So that zooms us out a little bit, and our axis of revolution is going to be that line. So you see here, this gives us our outer race all the way around with the groove cut into it. We say okay, and there we go. So there's our outer race. Let's go back in and do one quick setup. This is more just to make make it visually a little bit more pleasing. And if you've ever messed around with a ball bearing, you'll notice that they're kind of rounded over on the edges. So we'll go into the sketch here. We'll go to edit sketch. We'll go normal to that sketch and zoom back in a little bit here. We'll go to our fillet tool or fillet or whatever. We want to make that 1.2. Say enter, click on there, and click on there. And we will say okay. All right, so that gives us curves over. We say okay, we're done. And now we can rebuild. And when we zoom back out, you can see there's our outer race with rounded over corners. All right, so that's done. So we go up here, we say save. We'll pick a folder. And we'll say new folder. And we'll say peak 4-2. All right, go in there, and this is going to be outer ring. Let me say save. All right, so our outer ring is saved. We can close that. All right, so now we want to go new. We're going to say part. Okay. This next part we're going to make is the inner ring. The inner ring is very similar to the outer ring, except for if we look at the assembly drawing here, you see this is the inner ring here. So it's got the groove on the top side of its surface, so that the ball bearings will sit into that groove and spin with it. All right, so let's go back to our part. So we're going to go front plane again. We're going to go sketch. We'll draw our center lines again. So we want a vertical reference line through the origin. And we want a horizontal reference line through the origin. So, okay. We're going to do a center point rectangle again. Things like that. Say okay. And then let's do our smart dimensions again. So we're going to define some lines here. So here to our horizontal line, we're going to make that 25. We'll go our top line to our horizontal line. We're going to make that 37. All right. And then our width is going to be 31. All right. So there's our rectangle defined. So now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to draw the 3-point arc. So we go up here, we click, go down, click, spin around and back to the line, click, and say, okay. So let's zoom in here. We will define a few things here. Well, actually, let's convert our entities first. We'll convert this entity here. We'll say okay. And then we want to trim our entities. So we'll trim through there, and we'll trim through there. And that gives us our shape again. And we'll say okay. And we'll go back in here. Escape. We'll select this line and select this line. We'll make them equal. And we will say okay. And then let's go to our smart dimensions. I'm gonna go from our center point to our line. This is gonna be 8 again. And then our radius for this line is going to be 12 again. All right, so we have all of our distances measured there. So let us add in our rounded over corners. So we have 1.2 again, and we want to choose that line. I want to choose that corner. And we say okay. All right, so there we are. So we get outside of that, and we go to feature. We revolve our boss base. We want to revolve around this line, 360. And we say okay. And there we go. So here we go. We've got our inner race. So we'll go up here and we will save this. We'll save it in that week 4_2 folder, and we'll call this inner ring. Click save. All right, so the next part we want to draw, and we'll close out of that. We'll go into new part. So this next part is going to be the ball. So we'll go to our front plane again. We will click sketch. We want to put in a center line. Don't need the horizontal line this time. We just need a vertical center line. We're going to choose our line here. We will draw our line down, pull away, go back to it. So we're doing a rounded over curve and go back to that point. There we go. We say okay. All right, so let's go to smart dimensions. Let's say X. Okay, go to smart dimensions. We'll click on this line, pull off of it. We remember our radius was 12, so our diameter is 24. So we'll make this 24. All right, and then we want to go to our center point here, and then click Control and go to our origin. Click Control, and we want to make that coincident. So that brings those two centers up around that origin. All right, so now we're good with that. We say okay, and we go to feature. We revolve boss base, and there we go. We've got our ball made. So we say okay, and there we go. We've got a ball that is centered around the origin. So we'll go up to File, and we will save this. And we'll save it in that same folder. And you may be wondering why I'm putting _2 on here. It's because the part's already been made. You saw the assembly that I had right there. So even if they're in different folders, when you are naming parts, it likes you to have different names for all your parts. So we say save. All right, so there's the ball. All right, so last part, and this is where we kind of had some problems when we were doing the drawing during class is we're going to build that cage. So let's close out of here. And so this is the cage, right? This is the cage that holds the balls in. So the way we do that is we'll do here. We do new, we do part, say okay. We're going to go to our front plane again. We're going to sketch again. All right. We're going to put in our center lines. We'll do a horizontal center line. We will do a vertical center line. All right. And then we're going to draw in some circles here. And we're going to make them around this center point. So we'll do center point circles. We'll go here, we'll go out, and we'll go here, and we'll go out. All right. So okay. We'll go to Smart Dimensions. We're going to make the diameter of this outer ring 94. Say okay. We're going to make the diameter of the inner ring is going to be 86. Say okay. And then we're going to extrude this base. So we're going to extrude our boss base here. And let us extrude that base. Let's go backwards from here. So we're still on that front plane. We're going to extrude it backwards. And let's go back 20 and say okay. And go check. All right. So the next thing we want to do is we'll go to that front plane again. And we will sketch. And we'll go normal to that front plane. All right. And we want to draw in a line that we're going to use as a construction line. So we'll go center point here. We'll draw on out, and we want it to be into there. So we say okay. We'll go to Smart Dimensions, grab that line, we'll pull it out. We'll make that diameter 90. Say enter. Okay. So then we can click on that line, and we can go to all right, so we select this line right here, and what we want to do is we want to right click on it, and we want to go to construction geometry. And basically that makes it a non-entity in there. It's just a line that we can reference off of. Okay, so our next part here is we're going to draw in the cutouts for the ball bearings. So we have this done. We want to go in, let's draw ourselves a center line, a vertical center line. There we go. Say escape. And we can go here. Once again, it's a little easier if you draw it off of this intersection point. That way you can just snap up to that intersection point. So we'll want to be on this line. We're going to draw our line down, go away from it, come back, and escape and step back. There we go. All right. So that gives us our arc that we want. We say, okay. Remember that our ball is diameter of 24. So if we go smart dimensions here, we pull away from here, we can make this 24, say enter. All right, and then we say okay, and then we want to click on the center point of the ball and push control and go up and click on that line. And then we want to say coincident. So that will pull us up to that line. And you notice that I had to go off a little bit off of the line we drew to the side here to hit that construction line to get it to pull up to it. But it will still pull up and be vertical off of this center line because that's where we drew it. So we say okay. All right, so we've got our half circle drawn here. And what we can do now is we can go into features and we'll do an extruded cut or revolve cut, excuse me, a revolve cut around this line here, which is good. And we say, okay. All right, so that cuts out, and if we can scroll up here, you can see it cuts out into what will be our cage. It cuts out that ring, okay? So let's go back to that front plane and we'll go normal to that front plane. All right. And we will go into that revolve cut. And let's go and we will do some, we're going to cut out some fillets into this edge. So we'll here, and we'll go here, and we'll make those 1.2 like we did before. And we'll say, okay. There we go. And you scroll up, see, we got nice and clean there. All right, so one thing that we want to do is let's put on our temporary center points. So we say okay. And that will give us a line that runs through the center here on our ring and the line that runs through here. Right? And so now we're going to revolve this pattern around this ring. Okay. So we're going to go up to our features and we want to go, we have linear pattern here. We want to go to circular pattern. Okay. We're going to pick this face and this face. We have two of the fillets, so we can delete one of those. So those are both selected. Our direction that we want to go around this ring. So you can see it revolved us all the way around this ring. We have 8 of them. We knew that we had 8. We're going to have 8 balls, and we go 360 degrees all the way around. So with equal spacing. So we say okay. And there we go. And so that gives us a feature that looks like this, right? And those are all the same, drawn the same, and they're all equally spaced all the way around. So the last part about that we want to do this is we want to take it, so we want to make this a shell. So we don't want it to be big and wide like that. So to do that, you click up here and you go to shell, and we'll click on this face, the inner face, and this outer ring here, right? So all the faces that are cutouts, okay? And we want to make our shell, we want to make it 1 millimeter thick. So the 1 millimeter thick, and we say okay. And there we go. There's our cage for our ball bearings. So we can say okay, and we will save this into that same folder. We'll call it cage _2. We'll say save. All right. Oh, actually, we need to do one more thing. So let's go normal to that front plane again. We need to cut in our holes for the rivets to go through. So we'll go here, we'll go front plane, we'll say sketch. And we want to then put a hole in here that's centered into here. So let's turn back on. We'll go to our revolve cut right here. We'll go to our sketch, right? Because that's got this line in it. And we'll say, we'll make that a, excuse me, we'll make it visible. That way we can see it even when we're in this sketch here. Okay. Allows us to have an idea here. So the next thing we want to do is we need to find where the center of this ring is. So if we go and we take another center line, we go off of this point here and we draw up through here and we say, okay, and we say escape. And then we can go to smart dimensions. We'll click on this line, we'll click on this line, we'll pull out, right? And then in here, what we need to do is we need this angle to be 1/8 of 360 degrees. So you can do 360 divided by 8. Say enter. And that put us to there. So we need to go half of what that 45 is. So we needed it to be divided by 16, not 8. So let's step back there. We'll pull, we can just go here and go 360 divided by 16. There we go. That gives us a point that's dead center into in between these two ball bearing cutouts on our cage. Okay. So now we'll go over here. We will, on this line, draw a circle. And we will say, okay. Let's zoom in on that. And we're going to make that circle. We're going to give it a diameter of 2. Say, okay. All right. So then say, all right, we'll click on this center point. We'll go up, we'll click Control, and we'll click on that line. And we make it coincident, and that puts it up there. All right. And then we say, we get off of that, right? And then what we can do is we can take that, we can go feature, and we can do a extruded cut. And we want to go through wall. And we say, okay. And there we go. Now we have a hole through. So we can take our extruded cut here though, and we want to go to a circular pattern. All right. So we can zoom out. We have our, let us turn on all of our points there. So you can see it there. So we're going to circle around there. We have an extruded cut. It's selected. And our direction that we want to go in here and zoom in on that little center. There you go. And then we say, okay. And if you look at, we zoom out a little bit. You can see all the points there. And what we were doing is we were selecting, if you zoom in here, when we go and we turn on these temporary axes, that just gives us a center point axis to that ring. So that's the direction that everything's going to be revolving around. So, and you go 360 degrees around that center point axis. Same way we did the cuts for where the ball bearings are going to go. All right, so now we can go up to this sketch. We can hide that sketch, and we can hide our center point axis. Okay, there we go. So There we go. There's our cage. We'll click save because we made that change there, and we will exit out of that. So now we want to go here, and we want to go new. We want to go assembly and say OK. All right, and we will browse, and we want to browse to that folder we were making. It's right here. We actually came into it. And so we want to shift click, bring in all of these pieces, say open. And the way this works is as you bring stuff in, it will start bringing stuff in. The first piece you bring in is going to be fixed. We'll actually change that. So, and what that means is if a piece is fixed, like I can grab this here, but I can't pull it around. All the rest of the pieces I can grab and I can shift them around. So we actually want the ball to float in relationship to everything. And we want this outer ring to be fixed. So a few things that we're going to do is we're going to start lining stuff up. So we're going to turn on our temporary axes again so we can see the center of everything. And we want to line up so we know that the center of this ring and the center of this ring are going to be the same. So we have this feature up here that's called mate. And the mate feature lets you choose, or the mate function lets you choose features on your drawings and choose their relation. So we're going to choose mate. We're going to say this center point and this center point, and mate wasn't open. So there we go. That center point and this center point, right? And what that did is it drug this down to be on escape. So like I said, you choose mate and you choose this center line and we'll choose that center line. Pull it down in there. And since this outer ring is fixed now, everything is pulling in to fit with that outer ring, all right? All right, so the next thing we want to do is say okay on that. So our next mate that we want to do is we want these outer surfaces to be parallel to each other, or to be on the same plane. So there's a few ways you can do this. The way we're going to do is this advanced mate, and we're going to do width. And so we choose our first width will be that outside surface and that outside surface. And then we choose on our smaller inner ring, this outside surface and this outside surface. And you see it shifted in there, right? So let's zoom over there. And now if we spin around, you can see that they're matched up perfectly, all right? So we say okay, and we say okay. So our relationship between those two rings now is fixed and good. All right, so the next thing we want to do is we want to all right, so the next thing we want to do is we want to bring the ball bearings into this whole system here. So to do that, we will actually use the faces, because if you remember when we were drawing these, we drew them all around their origins. So what we can do is we can go and we can say, we'll use this inner ring. We can drop down the drawing on this inner ring. We can say mate, and you get the same drop down over here. So we have inner ring. We'll drop down its faces, and we'll drop down the faces for the ball. And we can go here and we can say front plane, and for our inner ring, we can say front plane. All right, and we'll say okay. And then we can say top plane, or no, let's go right plane. And we can say right plane, and we'll say okay. And what that did is it brought that ball in, so it's on the same orientation as this inner ring. And now the next thing we want to do is we want to mate this ball surface to the surface of this inner ring. So let's zoom in a little bit here. Okay, so we will go to our standard mate, which is what we're doing here. We'll click this face and we'll click this face. All right, so if say the ball was down in here and you click those, it might snap to the outside of this face and you just can reverse you can flip your mate alignment. So it might have looked like that. You click this button and it flips it to the other face. And we say, okay. All right, so we're looking at this and we're like, all right, well, we only have a single ball in here, right? So we want to get out of this mate feature, right? So we know that we need to have 8. So in this, we can do it the same way where we can do our pattern. So we'll click on this ball, right? We'll go up here and we'll go to circular component pattern. All right, we're going to rotate around this axis. All right, now its default is 2. We want to tell it to do 8. So we'll say 8, we'll say okay. There you go. There's all 8 balls are in there. All right. And we're looking good. So we say okay. And that has all of those in there. And you'll notice if we spin this inner ring, the ball bearings move around with it. All right. So now the second to last thing we want to do is we want to take this cage and we want to mate this cage onto the surface. So to do that, we can click on, we can do a mate. We can click on, oh, let me, there we go. We can click on the inner surface of that ball. And, oh, I'd already selected something. Let's exit out. When I must have scrolled over something and selected something there. So we'll do a mate. We'll click on that ball. And we can click on one of the balls there. And then we can spin around a little bit here. And we can click on, let me zoom in a little, the inner surface here. Oh, I want to say okay. And then we'll do a secondary. Click on the inner surface here and click on this ball. And then we can click on the inner surface here and click on this ball. Oh, my ball, my bad. Click on the inner surface here and click on that. And there we go. We gave it 3 points of reference. And basically it forces it in so that it fits into that spot where it's supposed to be. Now you'll notice we only have, we'll say okay to that, so we don't accidentally click on something else. We only have one side of this cage, right? So we'll exit out of this mate function. We're good, everything's good there. And you'll see when we spin this around, since that cage is linked to those balls, those are there. So our last part here is we're going to mirror, well, not quite the last, because we need to put the rivets in still. We're going to mirror this cage assembly onto this back side. So to do that, we go up here to this linear component pattern, we have mirror component. All right, and so for whatever reason, inner ring is selected. We'll delete that. Probably because I was clicked onto it. We want to mirror this component. And then the plane we want to mirror it on is that surface. Okay. And so we say okay. And you'll notice that it did a mirrored component, married up to that surface, and it fits along the ball bearings on the outside. All right. So the final part here is we are going to we're going to go into our parts library, into our toolbox, and we are going to pick a rivet to put in one of these holes. So we'll scroll down here to pins. We'll go to rivets, and we'll choose this rivet here. We'll pull it out, and there we go. And we'll flip it around here, and it's not quite long enough. So we need to make its length 6. Flip it around here. There you go. This length being 6, it goes through. And we say okay. And then we exit out of there. And we do one last pattern here. So we can click on that rivet, run the cage, click off. There we go, we click on the rivet, and we can go up here to circular component pattern, say okay. We have that rivet picked. We want to tell it that its rotation is going to be this line. All right, so it's got 2 of them there. We know we need 8. We say 8, enter. They show up. You can see them all in place. So we say checkbox. We're good. Right there, we have a finished ball bearing, or finished bearing. That's how you do circular patterning and how you do some of the basic mating of components. I'll put up a homework assignment for you guys. We're going to do a little bit of gear mating. I think next week is the way we're going to go. There's a few other ways to do some mating here. This is just the basics of how you align parts up and kind of stick them to each other. But if we were to click on this mate function here, you can scroll down here and you can see that you have mechanical mates. And so you can have cams, slots, hinges, gears, rack and pinions, screws, and joints. So when we'll go over how to use these mechanical mates next week, and also look at some of the motion studies for this. We can do a quick motion study here just to show this thing spinning. If we go to motion study and we want to pick that part, we're going to have a motor. And we're going to have it spin on this interface here. And we'll give it an RPM, say, of 10. So it's going a little slower. We'll say okay. And let's pull it out. We'll make it spin, say, for 10 seconds. All right, we calculate it. So it does the quick calculations on everything here. All right, let's just know that it's done. We can go in here maybe to settings, and let's give it a little bit higher frame rate. And we'll recalculate that. All right, and we should be able to click play. And there you go. So that is a basic motion study of something moving driven by a motor. Obviously very basic because all it is one component, it's spinning around. You have a few pieces to that, but really you could get to where you have gears driving, all kinds of things. Like basically if it's a mechanical feature that moves, we can do a motion study with it. So next week we'll look at a little bit more of that. We'll look at how the gears relate to each other, how you mate them up, and how you get them to spin in the right ratios. and we'll look at a few of the other mechanical mating features. Probably what I'll do is I will draw a bunch of the components beforehand and maybe record how I did that, and so you guys can watch that outside of class. But for class, we'll deal mainly with the mating of the features. So that's it for this week. I will post up the homework, and I will post up this video for you guys to watch. I hope you have a good weekend and a good next week, and I'll see you guys Wednesday.